Do you need this, Mrs. Kemp?
In 1968, Malcolm McDowell made his feature film debut in If, playing Mick Travis, the insolent leader of a trio of rebels in a stodgy British school that serves as a microcosm for society. McDowell's working relationship with the director, Lindsay Anderson, became so strong that they made 2 more films with Mick Travis, Oh Lucky Man and Britannia Hospital. But in between the first 2 films of the trilogy, McDowell was cast in a role that would define him. A Clockwork Orange, directed by Stanley Kubrick, based on a novel by Anthony Burgess, was released 3 years after If. In the film, McDowell plays Alex, the insolent leader of a quartet of hoodlums in a stodgy, futuristic British society. McDowell was considered for the part after Kubrick watched If 5 times and allegedly told his wife, "We have found our Alex." McDowell confesses to going to meet Kubrick at the urging of Lindsay Anderson. Anderson even pinpointed a moment in If that he believes personified Alex, and he suggested McDowell take that specific energy to the audition. However it all happened, A Clockwork Orange stands alone as a unique entity in film. A critical masterpiece that maintains its passionate cult following even today, inspiring as many Alexes at Comic-Con as there are Slave Leahs and Heath Jokers. This is quite a feat for a somewhat dated 30-year-old art film that defies placement in any specific genre. I first caught A Clockwork Orange on Cinemax in 1980. I was 17, and I knew that if I was caught watching it, I would be grounded, so I had to sit very close to the TV with the volume very low. I remember being blown away by it and not really understanding why. With the advent of VHS, I would wind up watching A Clockwork Orange some 15 more times over the ensuing decade. It was one of those films that fixated me, begging to be read and understood, the kind of film that inspired many a group of college friends to stay up all night discussing it. If you have not seen it, you should probably go do that before learning anything about the plot. For those who have, a rehash is not necessary, but I'll do it anyway. Alex, played by McDowell, leads a violent street gang in futuristic Great Britain, going about their world committing random acts of violence just for violence sake. When Alex is betrayed by his friends, or droogs, and arrested, he volunteers for a scientific procedure purported to cure him of his violence. What it actually does is reduce him to a Pavlovian machine, programmed to respond to violence with excruciating nausea and sickness, thus reducing him to a Clockwork Orange. In my younger days, I was fascinated by the film's central theme, the question of whether or not it was ethical to deprive even a monster like Alex of his free will. It certainly seemed wrong in principle, but I couldn't argue with its upside, since at the same time the idea of chemical castration for sex offenders was just starting to gain ground. It was a conundrum at the time, one of those issues I spent hours mulling over and debating. But years have passed since then, and in that time, I've gained more wisdom. Perhaps I come off like the stodgy British society that Burgess's novel satirizes, but in my opinion, of course it is ethical to deny Alex of his free will. Isn't that what prisons are for? To deprive the worst a culture has to offer of their freedom to commit future atrocities. I wonder that I ever had a doubt about this issue, especially as violence continues to escalate globally. How could it have ever been a question in my mind? But then I watched the film again, and all the questions were answered. It is no wonder that so many viewers, like myself, sympathize with Alex and see him as the victim. That is exactly what Kubrick intended by casting a charming, charismatic actor like Malcolm McDowell to play the part. On the surface, this looks like a logical convention on the director's part. After all, if you're asking an audience to follow a monster, you have to make the monster interesting. But Malcolm McDowell makes Alex too interesting, and what more, he makes him lovable. I'd go so far as to say Alex is sexy, which is why fans at Comic-Con still dress like him. Hey, women have Slave Leah to turn heads. What equivalent do men have? Why, violent but charming anarchists, of course. Everything about the film is premeditated to put us firmly in Alex's camp. And while I admire that from a craftsman's point of view, I see it as terribly irresponsible. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love this film. I give it the full 5 stars on Netflix, and I rank it among the top 10 films that changed my life. But my experienced eyes see it for what it is, and worse, see its rather dangerous influence. It's a beautiful film to watch, a great film to discuss, but for me, that's where it ends. I don't want to dress like Alex. I don't want to mimic his futuristic speech. And when I used the phrase "vidi well" in a recent screenplay, I was trying to repulse the reader, not posture for him. I still strongly recommend A Clockwork Orange with a few prerequisites. Surround yourself with thoughtful, intelligent friends. Watch the film with these friends more than once if possible. And be willing to discuss this film with your friends or those you meet online. This is a movie that was meant to provoke thought, not imitation. An intelligent discourse is the logical progression of that. Mad Matt says "vidi well," which is slang for check it out. And don't be in such a hurry to run out and purchase that codpiece.
All right, we've seen what you can do with a boy. How are you when they come a little bigger?